It started with something so ordinary that I nearly missed it. A coat. That was it. I was on my way back from a meeting when Lily texted me. "Hey babe, any chance you can pick up my black coat from Eastside Cleaners? The one with the gold buttons. Totally forgot and I need it for tomorrow. Love you." I didn't hesitate. It was the kind of thing I did without thinking twice. Just like picking up her oat milk or refilling the printer ink she always forgot we needed. We'd been together long enough that these things weren't favors. They were just part of the rhythm, the routine. I got to the Cleaners around 4:30. The older woman at the counter smiled, asked for the claim ticket. I didn't have one, so I gave Lily's name. She disappeared into the back, and when she returned, she held up that familiar black wool coat like it was a flag. "Looks good as new," she said. It did, but I remember something was off right away. Not with the coat. No, the coat was perfect. Pressed, lint-free, warm. It was the pocket. One of them bulged slightly, like something had been left inside. The kind of thing Lily usually double-checked before dropping anything off. In the car, I draped the coat in the back seat, but that pocket was bothering me. I didn't want to wrinkle anything, but curiosity got the better of me. I reached in with 2 fingers, slow, careful. A folded square of receipt paper slid out. Lightweight, innocent at first, until I read it. Mira, the restaurant printed in bold across the top. Dinner for 2. Champagne. Date. Last Thursday. Time. 7:41 p.m. I stared at it for at least a full minute. Just stared. Because I knew that night. I knew it too well. She told me she was staying over at Rachel's. Girl time, she said. They were going to microwave popcorn, drink cheap red wine, and rewatch Dead Man's Bluff, this terrible horror movie they'd bonded over in college. She even sent me a picture around 8 p.m. Rachel holding a glass of wine, both of them grinning under a fuzzy blanket. I'd zoomed in at the time, just to see if I could spot the snacks on the table. So how was there a receipt for a dinner for 2 at Mira, one of the priciest restaurants in town, on the same night? I don't remember the rest of the drive home. It felt like I was watching myself from a few feet above, like I was detached from my own body, going through motions that didn't feel real. When I got to the apartment, I laid the coat carefully on the armchair in the living room and unfolded the receipt again. Read it 5 more times. I even Googled the timestamp, wondering, could they have gone after the movie? Did the girls have dinner there and then head to Rachel's? But no. Mira stops seating after 8:30. No late-night diners. No TV in the bar area. Certainly not the type of place you go after microwaving popcorn in sweatpants. I waited until she came home, around 6:15. She had a canvas tote full of groceries and a bottle of wine tucked under one arm. She looked normal, casual, like she hadn't just ripped a hole in the fabric of our marriage without even realizing it. "Hey," she said, smiling, kissed me on the cheek. "Thanks for grabbing the coat. You're the best." I didn't say anything, just nodded and walked into the kitchen. That's when I did it. I placed the receipt on the counter. Not folded, not hidden. Just laid it there like a card in a losing hand. Face up. She followed me in, took one look at it and didn't flinch. Didn't hesitate. Didn't ask where I found it. Her eyes flicked to the date, the restaurant, the total. Then right back to me. She didn't even blink. "Oh," she said, reaching for a wine glass. "That was with Connor." "Connor? You remember Connor? From work? He's in operations. He's been going through a brutal divorce. Like, absolutely devastating. I didn't want to talk about it because it's personal, but I was just trying to support him. You know?" Her voice didn't shake. Not once. It was soft, practiced. Like she'd already rehearsed this explanation for someone else. Like she'd known this moment might come. I said nothing. I didn't trust myself to speak. I just stood there, arms crossed, heart in my throat. She sipped the wine calm, so calm, and then tilted her head with a small, amused smile. If I were trying to hide something, Jake, I wouldn't have left the receipt in the coat. And there it was. That sentence. That phrase that hid a lie. It hit harder than any confession ever could. Not because of what it said, but because of how clean it was. How neat. It was airtight. The kind of logic you can't argue with unless you're already suspicious. And then, as if that wasn't enough, she doubled down. "You've really got to work on this jealousy thing," she said, half laughing. "It's like pathological. You don't trust me over a dinner receipt?" I stared at her, unable to move. My fingers dug into my own arms as I tried to make sense of what I was hearing. Gaslight, deflect, minimize. She hit all three in less than 30 seconds. I should have argued, should have shouted, should have demanded to know what kind of dinner for two included champagne and ran over $200 with tip. But I didn't, because in that moment, I still wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe I was wrong, that I had misread everything, that there was some rational explanation I hadn't thought of yet. Because if I accepted the alternative, that she had lied to me, that she had gone to dinner with another man while pretending she was at a sleepover with friends, then I had to also accept that the foundation we'd built together had cracks I hadn't seen. And once you start seeing the cracks, you can't unsee them. I remember backing away from the counter, nodding slowly, like a man convincing himself the house isn't burning while the smoke wraps around his legs. She smiled again. "See? There's nothing to worry about." Then she kissed me on the cheek and walked out of the kitchen, humming to herself. That was it. No dramatic confrontation. No late-night fight. Just a receipt. A name. A champagne dinner. And a phrase that sounded so simple, so casual, that it buried the truth beneath a blanket of reason. If I were trying to hide something, I wouldn't have left the receipt. But lies aren't always in the shadows. Sometimes they live right there in the light, daring you to look away. They say hindsight is 20/20, but that's not quite right. Hindsight isn't clear. It's cruel. Because once you see the pattern, once the picture starts to come into focus, you realize all the signs were there, you just didn't want to connect them. That night with the receipt didn't end in a fight. We didn't talk about it again. She went to bed early. I stayed up late, sitting on the couch with the TV muted, flipping through static in my own head. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. Just quiet in that strange, pressurized way, like everything was waiting to break. The next morning, I woke up before she did. I watched her sleep for a while, felt like spying. She looked peaceful, her cheek pressed against the pillow, one hand tucked under her chin. Same woman I'd fallen in love with. Same woman who used to leave post-it notes in my wallet, draw little hearts in the margins of grocery lists, call me just to hear my voice when I worked late. I wanted to believe that woman still existed, but something in me had shifted. Peace moved. A blindfold lifted just enough. That's when it started. The slow, obsessive reassembly of everything I'd ignored. Every detail that hadn't made sense but that I'd brushed off in the name of trust. Because trust, when you love someone, is supposed to be automatic. It's the glue. You don't keep score. You don't pull threads. You believe them, until you don't. The first thread I pulled was her phone. Not literally, I never picked it up. That wasn't my thing. But I noticed the way she handled it. It used to sit screen up on the coffee table, face unlocked. She'd leave it lying around when she showered, when she cooked, when she went to the balcony for air. Now it was always screen down, always locked, even at home, even in the bathroom. She'd take it with her like it was part of her anatomy. And if it buzzed, she'd casually reach for it, angle the screen away, glance, and then lock it again, one quick move like she was flicking away a fly. And the apps changed. Lily used to mock those disappearing message apps, Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp. She once called them apps for cheaters and teenagers. We used to joke about it. But now I saw the icons on her screen, tucked in a folder labeled random. I only noticed because she opened it by accident one night while swiping through. She closed it fast, pretending not to notice me noticing. And I pretended too. That's what you do when you're still hoping you're wrong. Another detail. She stopped hugging me goodbye. That sounds small, but in a relationship built on habits, it stood out. For years, every time I left for work or came home, she'd wrap her arms around me. Even if she was in the middle of doing something, even if we were annoyed with each other, it was our reset button. Then one morning I went to kiss her before heading out, and she just said, "See you tonight," without looking up from her laptop. No smile, no touch. Just a dismissal. I told myself she was distracted, but it kept happening. The changes snowballed. She started going to the gym again. Not a big deal, right? Except she'd never liked gyms. She used to say they made her feel self-conscious. We'd done yoga at home together, jogged around the park. That was her thing. Now she had a gym bag. She had new shoes, new leggings, a schedule that didn't make sense. Going at 8 p.m. Coming back close to 10, hair perfectly blown out, not a drop of sweat on her. I told myself maybe she was using the sauna, or maybe she really was getting into fitness again, until I hugged her one evening out of habit and something wasn't right. Her hair smelled different, not just shampoo, a scent I didn't recognize, musky, expensive, masculine, cologne. She pulled away a second too fast and said, "You okay?" I smiled and nodded. She smiled back. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. Then there was the lingerie, the stuff she used to laugh at in stores, calling it impractical. She used to say it was all a scam. Who wears this in a real marriage? And now she owned pieces I'd never seen before. I found them by accident, tucked in the laundry bin under her pajamas. Lace, black, satin, still smelling faintly of perfume. I asked her about it one night, teased her. "You shopping for someone else?" I joked. She rolled her eyes. "Oh please, you're just not very observant. I've had those for months." I didn't push, just smiled and said, "Guess I'm losing my touch." She smirked. "Guess you are." I laughed, but it felt like bleeding behind a smile. The distance between us grew, but it wasn't obvious. We still made dinner, still talked about our days, still watched shows together, but everything had a hollow echo. She was right there physically, but the emotional part, the part of her that used to light up when I walked in, that would reach for me without thinking, that part had gone quiet. And the silence was the loudest detail of all. The strange how two people can share a space but stop sharing a life. We slept in the same bed, but I stopped reaching for her. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know who I was reaching for anymore. I started paying attention to things I used to miss. She stopped asking me about my day. I'd come home, give the usual long day sigh, and she'd just nod. She stopped singing in the shower. She stopped calling me Jake, in that voice she only used when she wanted something. That teasing, flirty version of my name. Now it was just hey or can you? And then there were the sudden bursts of charm, like she was trying to press rewind. She'd cook a fancy dinner out of nowhere, wear a dress to pour me a glass of wine, smile like nothing was wrong, like nothing had changed. And maybe that's what scared me the most, because she was trying, just not with me. She was trying to keep the illusion intact, and I was complicit in that. I started waking up at night, staring at the ceiling, hearing her breathe next to me, wondering if the person lying in our bed was the same person I married. I used to think affairs happened suddenly, like flipping a switch, but now I understood they happened slowly, in the pauses, in the deleted messages, in the subtle shifts, in the tiny moments when one person looks at you and doesn't really see you anymore. One night, I came across an old photo on my phone. Lily, sitting on the kitchen counter in a hoodie, holding a mug, laughing at something I'd said. No makeup, no filter, just pure light. I stared at it for a long time. That woman felt like someone I used to know. And I had this thought, this terrible, aching thought I couldn't shake. What if I've already lost her? And I just haven't admitted it yet. That was when the puzzle really started to take shape. Each detail, each omission, each cold shoulder, they weren't isolated. They were threads in the same tapestry. One I hadn't wanted to see, but now I couldn't not see it. And what scared me most was realizing how long it had been happening. Right in front of me. The night everything finally broke was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of evening that pretends to be ordinary. Like it doesn't know it's about to ruin someone's life. It was 2 days before New Year's. Lily stood by the door, slipping on her heels, checking her reflection in the mirror by the hallway. She wore that dress, the pale blue one she'd packed for our honeymoon in Santorini. The one she said made her feel beautiful. I hadn't seen it in years. Team dinner, she said casually, grabbing her coat. Nothing fancy, just something informal before the holidays. I nodded, sitting on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone. My chest felt tight, like I was already holding my breath. Want me to come? I asked, keeping my tone light, almost joking. She didn't even turn around. No, it would be awkward. You know how co-workers are. That was the moment, the exact second when the last excuse collapsed. Not because of what she said, but because of how fast she said it. Too quick, too prepared. She left behind her car keys. I noticed them on the entry table about 10 minutes later, along with her work badge, and a small folded card I recognized instantly. Mira. Same restaurant, same elegant font, same lie. I didn't plan anything dramatic. I didn't rehearse lines or imagine confrontations. I just grabbed my jacket and drove. My hands were steady. That surprised me most. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shaking. I was done guessing. The restaurant was packed. Holiday crowd. Laughter spilling out onto the sidewalk. Coats draped over chairs. Glasses clinking. I paused just inside the door, scanning the room. And then I saw her. She was sitting at a long table with about 8 people. Co-workers, I assumed. And right next to her, too close to be coincidence, was Connor, the recently divorced co-worker, the man she'd used as a shield. Her hand rested on the table near his. Their shoulders touched. She leaned toward him when she laughed. And she was laughing. I didn't rush over. I didn't interrupt. I just stood there, invisible in plain sight, watching a woman I loved exist effortlessly in a world that no longer included me. A waiter passed around champagne flutes. Someone clinked a glass. Connor stood up, raised his drink, and said something I couldn't hear. Lily stood too. She lifted her glass high and shouted, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. Even toasts are boring with him. The table erupted. Laughter. Applause. Someone whistled. I felt it then. Not pain. Not rage. Clarity. I walked forward, picked up a spare glass from a nearby table, and stepped into the edge of their circle. No one noticed me at first. Then Lily turned. Her face didn't go pale. It didn't freeze. It fell. I raised my glass, my voice calm, steady, almost polite. Then this one is my last. No yelling. No explanation. I didn't wait for her to speak. I didn't look at Connor. I didn't need to. I set the glass down and walked out. Behind me, the laughter stopped. Outside, the air was cold and clean. I stood there for a moment, letting it hit my lungs. I realized something strange. I wasn't heartbroken. I was free. I drove home slowly, parked, went inside, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. I didn't cry. I didn't drink. I didn't punch anything. I observed. She came home at 2 in the morning. You're still up? She said lightly, slipping off her shoes. The dinner ran late. I looked at her, really looked, and felt nothing. Not hatred, not love, just the hollow certainty that what we had was already over. It just hadn't known it yet. She went to bed without another word. And that was it. No more hiding, no more guessing. The truth had stood up, raised a glass, and announced itself to the room. And I had finally listened. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken. Not because I was replaying her toast in my head. Not even because I was angry. I didn't sleep because I didn't need to. Because for the first time in months, maybe longer, my mind wasn't running laps in the dark. It had finally stopped. That's what people don't tell you about betrayal. It doesn't always break you. Sometimes it unfreezes you. I sat at the kitchen table until sunrise. Just me, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, and the weight of a silence I had grown used to but never understood until now. A silence that hadn't just entered the house recently. It had moved in, taken root. I just hadn't been brave enough to call it what it was. The sound of absence. She came home around 2:15 a.m. The door opened softly, like she thought I'd be asleep. She didn't flick on the light. She never did when she came in late. Habit, I guess. Or guilt. Her heels clicked lightly on the hardwood floor. She paused when she saw me sitting at the table, still dressed. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I was still holding the mug like it had something left to offer. She set her purse down carefully, like she was trying not to wake a sleeping baby. The party ran long, she said. Her voice was casual. Like the kind of thing you'd say after catching a late movie. We ended up going for drinks after. Sorry I didn't text. Battery died. I didn't answer. I didn't look at her. I just blinked slowly and let the silence stretch. Let it breathe. She stood there for another few seconds, probably expecting a question. A fight. Anything that would give her a foothold to shift the blame again. But I gave her nothing. And I think in that moment she finally understood. There would be no performance tonight. No set pieces. No lines to deliver. The stage was gone. She moved past me without another word. Walked into the bedroom, kicked off her heels, and changed into pajamas. I heard the faucet run. The closet door slide open and shut. The sound of hangers clinking together. I stayed at the table. The house around me felt staged, like one of those fake living rooms in a furniture store. Familiar objects carefully arranged, but lifeless. And I realized that's exactly what we had become. A set. Not a marriage. Not a home. Just props and lighting. Lily had been playing her role so well for so long that I hadn't noticed when the script changed. And me? I was just the background character, standing off to the side, waiting for my next cue. But that night I didn't deliver it. Because I had stopped believing in the story. In the morning, I showered, shaved, got dressed for work like everything was normal. She joined me in the kitchen wearing a robe and a soft expression I hadn't seen in months. She made coffee, put 2 slices of bread in the toaster. We stood in the same kitchen where we'd once danced barefoot at midnight, where we'd whispered about baby names and late mortgages. Now we moved like strangers practicing choreography. "Do you want eggs?" she asked. I shook my head. She studied me for a moment. "You okay?" I nodded, sipping my coffee. She nodded back, as if that was enough. And that was our morning. Performed and forgotten. At work, I went through the motions. Emails, meetings, deadlines. But I wasn't there. Not really. I was somewhere else, somewhere outside myself. Watching a man named Jake pretend to be a husband, a team player, a functioning adult. All while holding a secret in his chest like a stone. He had already left. He just hadn't moved out yet. That week passed slowly. She tried. That's the part that haunted me, in a strange way. She tried. Cooked dinner twice. Asked if I wanted to watch our old favorite series. Lit candles on the dining table. She wore that blue dress again the next night. This time at home, under the pretense of, just wanted to feel pretty. No makeup. Hair down. Like a ghost of someone I used to love. I told her she looked beautiful. Because she did. And because the words didn't cost me anything anymore. After dinner, she leaned in and kissed me, tentative and warm. I let her, but it felt distant, like kissing someone in a dream you're waking up from. A person you remember loving but can't feel anymore. She smiled when I kissed her back. But I wasn't smiling inside. I was taking mental inventory, quietly packing boxes in my mind. I began removing myself from our life in fragments. I started small. I stopped leaving my wallet in the bowl near the front door. Started carrying it with me, even around the house. I moved my passport from the shared filing cabinet to a drawer in my office. I signed up for a P.O. box across town. I stopped paying the gas bill from our joint account and opened a new checking account at a different bank. A quiet account. One with no paper statements. Just digits on a screen only I could see. At night, when she fell asleep beside me, I'd stare at the ceiling and plan. To count shirts. Mentally list the things I'd take, the things I'd leave behind. I even started looking at apartments. Nothing fancy. Just quiet places with flexible leases and blank walls. I wasn't waiting for a reason to leave anymore. I was waiting for the moment I could do it without drama. Without breaking the illusion. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. The most surreal part was how easily she slipped back into the performance. How she pretended nothing had changed. Or maybe she wasn't pretending. Maybe she really believed a few home-cooked meals and a soft voice could repair months of distance. A few compliments could rebuild trust. But she never apologized. Not once. Not for the toast. Not for the lies. Not for making me feel invisible in my own home. She never asked what I saw that night. Never asked why I hadn't mentioned it. Never said, "Let's talk." She just assumed I'd chosen to forget. That I'd chosen to stay. But I hadn't. I had just learned how to be quiet while I left. The way people can keep living side by side even after the love has gone. Like roommates too polite to acknowledge that the lease expired months ago. We made the bed. We folded laundry. We filled the fridge. But we didn't touch each other. Not really. Not in any way that meant anything. We were actors in a play with no audience left. And the curtain had already fallen. I didn't slam a door. I didn't pack a suitcase in the middle of the night. I didn't scream, accuse, or beg for answers. When I finally decided to leave Lily, I did it like a man fading out of a photograph, one detail at a time. I peeled myself away from the life we had built like old wallpaper, carefully so nothing ripped, because I wanted clean lines. I didn't want to leave jagged edges behind. There's something about a quiet exit that hits harder than any explosion. It lingers longer. It doesn't demand attention. It takes it. I began with documents. Birth certificate. Social security card. The kind of papers you only think about when something ends or something begins. I made copies of what I needed and stored them in a manila folder I labeled simply, "Move." Then came the bank account. It wasn't even hard. I walked into a branch on my lunch break, sat with a pleasant woman named Rita, and told her I needed a private checking account. No shared access. No joint name. No paper statements. She smiled, clicked a few keys, handed me a new debit card, and said, "You're all set, Mr. Carson." And just like that, I was halfway gone. The apartment came next. A one-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, 15 minutes away. Month-to-month lease. Furnished. No questions asked. I told the landlord I was between transitions. He nodded like he'd heard it all before. I kept the keys in my glove box. Didn't even bring them inside. Just knowing they were there, tucked under a receipt for gas and an old granola bar wrapper, gave me a kind of peace I hadn't felt in months. Back at home, I started packing slowly, deliberately. One drawer at a time. A few shirts into a gym bag. My spare laptop. Some books. Things I could move without her noticing. I made sure to never leave the closet looking emptier than usual. It wasn't deception. It was escape. And I did it in silence. She noticed I was quieter. More polite. More composed. She probably thought it was progress. Healing. She didn't know that my silence wasn't forgiveness. It was finality. I was done arguing. Done trying to fix something that had rotted from the inside out. One night she cooked dinner. Real dinner. The kind we hadn't shared in months. Roasted chicken, garlic bread, 2 glasses of wine. Candles. She even played that playlist we used to put on during date nights. Soft acoustic songs that used to mean something. "Thought we could have a night just for us," she said. I nodded. Sat down. Listened to her talk about work, about a podcast she liked, about how cold it had gotten. I smiled where I needed to. Asked a question or two. Not out of love, but because I had already let go. And people who let go don't yell. They don't accuse. They exit. Quietly. After dinner, she curled up on the couch next to me. Placed her head on my shoulder like she used to. I let her. Not because I wanted to feel close, but because I didn't want to cause a scene. I had a plan, and this wasn't part of it. She sighed, nuzzled into me. "I'm glad we're okay again," she whispered. I didn't answer. The next day, I moved the last few things into the apartment. The new place smelled like fresh paint and old wood. The kind of scent that makes you feel both uncomfortable and free. I stood in the living room, surrounded by boxes and silence, and felt something shift inside me. Relief. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet kind. Like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not friends. Not family. I wasn't ready to explain. I wasn't ready to field questions or accept condolences. I needed space to feel the truth of it. Not the performance, not the narrative. Just the raw, honest truth. I had been betrayed. I had been lied to. I had been left behind emotionally, mentally, int asterisk mately. And I wasn't going to sit in that wreckage anymore pretending it could be restored. One evening, I stopped by the house while she was out running errands. I had 20 minutes. That's all I needed. I gathered the last few pieces, tools from the garage, my childhood photo album, the watch my father gave me when I turned 25. I moved through the rooms quietly, touching nothing I didn't want to take. When I was done, I stood in the doorway and looked at the place I once called home. It didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a stage that had finished its show. No audience left. No encore needed. The next morning, I left my wedding ring on the nightstand. No note. No explanation. Just the ring. And I walked out the front door for the last time. No slamming. No shouting. Just steps. One after the other. She texted me that afternoon. "Hey, where are you? Everything okay?" I didn't respond. Not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say. Later that week, she sent another message. "I'm worried. Can we talk?" I read it from the new apartment, sitting on the floor with a takeout box and a half-assembled bookshelf. I stared at her name on the screen for a full minute before turning my phone off. She had made her choices. I had made mine. And silence was no longer the absence of words. It was the presence of freedom. Lily tried to rewrite the ending. 2 weeks after I left, she threw a surprise birthday dinner at the cafe where we once celebrated our anniversary. Friends, coworkers, even my sister were there. Midway through, she stood up, smiled, and held out a folder like it was a gift. "Jake and I decided to divorce. Everything is civil. Like adults." I walked up, took the folder from her hand, and said, calmly and clearly, "Thank you all for coming. The rest will be handled later." I turned to leave. No dramatics. No speech. Just finality. But just as I reached the door, Lily's sister, Amber, stood up. She didn't say a word at first. Then she walked after me and whispered, "Wait for me." So I did. And we walked out together. I didn't scream. I didn't plead. I didn't ask for anything back. A month later, the court ruled in my favor. The house and accounts were mine. Lily moved out quietly, leaving her key on the kitchen table. No note, no scene, just silence. The neighbors started waving again. The space felt lighter, cleaner, like a chapter had truly ended. Amber began stopping by just for coffee at first. We didn't talk about Lily. We didn't need to. One afternoon, as we sat in the quiet, I remembered Lily's voice echoing across the restaurant. "Even toasts are boring with him." But she was wrong. That toast was my last. And my silence had said everything.